Okay, so finally, we're gonna write some code. First thing we're gonna do is we're gonna hop on the struggle bus and we're gonna make a vanilla API without any framework in Node.js. So I'm gonna hop into my editor and we're gonna just do just that. I'm going to just make a new project here. So please feel free to follow along with me. This is pretty much the pace for the rest of the course. But like I said, the site has like the code that I'll mostly be doing. I won't be looking at this as I go through, so I might write it slightly differently than what is here, but you can always catch up just by looking at this. So let's do that. So we're gonna make a new repo here. Let me make one. I'm gonna call it course, or yeah, we'll call it course. And then if you've never created a new npm project before, you could just do npm init. I'm gonna do -- yes to just get through all those prompts. And I'm just gonna open this thing up in VS Code. Okay. And then I'm just gonna create a new folder here called source to separate my source code out. And then I'm gonna make a new file called index.js. So yeah, let's write some code here. So first thing first, like I said, this is vanilla API. We're not going to install anything. Everything we get for free. So I'm going to require something called HTTP from HTTP. This is a built-in module for creating APIs and interacting with things inside of Node.js. And just go back to the notes here. And basically, like I said, for the most part, you can do everything from just this HTTP module. In fact, even Express and any other server framework builds on top of this HTTP module. So it's just an abstraction around it. Here in the code samples, I'm using like imports and stuff. If you want to use ES6, like if you know how to do that, like please go ahead. But as I'm live coding, I'm just doing require. We are going to switch this over to TypeScript at some point. Don't worry, you don't need to know TypeScript. TypeScript is a really cool language that has optional types, emphasis on optional. We will not be doing a bunch of type stuff, but we will be using TypeScript for a really cool tool that we'll be using that benefits heavily from using TypeScript. So we're gonna switch over to that and we will be able to do imports. But for now, you can just do require. But yeah, let's go ahead and make that server. So what we can do is I can go down here, I can say server equals http.create server like this. And this is going to receive a callback, and I'm going to make it asynchronous. And this callback is going to be passed a couple arguments. It's going to be given. The first thing is typically we'll call it REQ or rec, or short for request. This is the incoming request, right? So let's talk about a little bit how a server works. A server is like, it's a computer that's connected to the internet, and in this case, for HTTP, for this protocol, you can request information or you can request to do something on a server from any other client. And a client is anything else. It can be another server, it can be a front-end app, it can be a mobile app, it can be anything that's connected to the internet. That's basically what a client is. So a client can make a request to attempt to do something on a server, and then the server typically has to respond to that client, and then the connection is closed. If the server doesn't respond, the connection typically times out on whatever limit that the client decided for that timeout period. So there's this whole mechanism of sending a request and then the server responding to the request. So here's the incoming request, and then here's the response. We get this response object. I'm going to name it res for short. And this is typically the pattern you would see in most Node frameworks is rec res. This is a very common thing. If you've ever used Next.js, you've seen this before. Well, Next.js is heavily based off of Express, which is heavily based off on HTTP. So it all just kind of works together. So we have that. And we're going to create some naive implementation of a router. So we want to do something when someone does a GET request to a specific URL. So you may not know what a GET request is right now. You may not know like how URLs work, and we'll get there. But for now, just follow along. So we're going to check to see if someone's doing a specific request. So we can say if rec.method method is, we'll get to it, but it's just like a way to show intent on what you want to do on the server. So if someone is doing a method of get and rec.url equals /, so if they just did a get request to whatever address this server is hosted on, then we want to respond with something. And you can pretty much do whatever you want here. You can send back data, you can send back a message. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna change the status. So I can say status code, I'm gonna say 200, we'll learn about that. And then I'm just gonna say res dot, let's say send, oh wait, let's just say, yeah, let's just say end. I was gonna say end here. Let's just end it. So we'll say end, and that's it. This is like bare bones, super easy server. It doesn't really do anything. You can do a get request to this URL. It'll get back at 200 if you do, and then it'll close. End will close the connection. So that's the API. The next thing we have to do is we have to start this. So we can go down here and we can say server.listen. And we have to put in some magical number here. We'll talk about this number in a minute, but I'm just gonna put a 4-digit number. I'm gonna put I'm gonna put 3001. You can put the same if you want. And then I'm gonna put a callback after it. And then this callback, I'm just gonna put a log that just says server on localhost 3001, like that. Okay, any questions on this so far? And if you thought, this was tedious and you don't want to like make APIs in Node now after me showing you, yeah, that's the point. Like no one should want to make APIs like this. Like that's why I use frameworks. And it gets way more tedious when you actually want to like do real things like posting and updating and creating and deleting and input validation. It's just gonna be you're just gonna be creating your own framework. I went down that path. It's not fun. You might as well just use something else. Okay, so no questions on that. Let's try to start this thing. Yes.
Why did you use async in the create server?
Yeah, I use async in the create server because I was going to do something async, and then halfway through it, I decided not to. So yeah, I'm very random. I'm live coding, so like yeah, I was like, oh, I'm gonna send something back asynchronous, and I was like, wait, no, I don't want to do that. That's just too much. That's just extra. It's getting in the way. So yeah, I don't actually need the async, and it's not hurting if it's there if I'm not using it. So it's totally fine. Let's try to start this API. Let's start the server. So you can go to your terminal, assuming you have Node installed. You will, for this course, it's probably best to have at least Node version 14. If you don't have at least Node version 14, I recommend it. You could probably get away with 10 for the most part. Let me think. You could probably get away with 10, but to be safe, you would want to have at least Node version 14. I recommend using NVM, Node Version Manager. I think there's another one called N. I never used that one, but I heard really good things about it. To manage your Node versions and just switch to Node version 14. It works on Windows or Mac. And if you don't know what version you're on, you can just type which, or you can type out node -- version, and it'll tell you. I'm rocking 16.13.1. But yeah, if you have Node, you can just type out Node, you can type source, and then the path to that file, like this. And if you do it right, you're gonna see a log that says server on HTTP localhost : 3000. And if you've ever worked in a terminal before, you're probably used to running some type of command, and then the terminal running that command, and then the terminal like closes and it goes back to a prompt. Well, notice that my terminal did not go back to a prompt. It's just sitting here, right? That's the difference between a server and like some script that you would write in Bash or whatever your language of choice. A server is always on, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Okay, so now that I have that, on Mac, I know you can command click pretty much any URL in the terminal to go to it in the browser. But if not, just copy this URL and go to it in the browser. And mine just crapped out. Here we go. So you can see that I tried to do a GET request to it, and we know it's working because I got an error here. Res.status code 200 is not a function. That was me thinking that it's express. So we can't do that. I'm actually just going to delete that and just do end. And I'm just going to stop my server. Oh, it already stopped because it died. I'm just going to start it up again. And then I'm just going to go back and refresh. So I'm just going to refresh, and you're just going to get a blank page here. You're going to get nothing. And that's how I know the server is working, because it didn't die. And what I can do to verify that is I can actually either send something back, or I can just put a log here. I'm just going to put a log here in the server that just says console.log, hello from server. And unlike a front-end app, this log isn't going to show up in the browser's console, right? It's going to show up in the terminal. So if I want to see where this is logging from, I would need to stop my server, start it again, go back to the browser, initiate that GET request. So I'm going to refresh my page. That's going to initiate the request. Go back to the terminal, and then I should see hello from server. So we created a server. We registered a GET request to URL of just slash. We sent a log to the output of the terminal, and then we ended the request. And then we initiated that request by going to the browser and typing in the server and hitting enter, which, if you didn't know, actually does a GET request. When you go to a URL in a browser, that GET request then triggered this handler, which then logged hello from server. And that's the basics of a server. Every API from here on out that you're ever going to work on is just this, but times 10. But it's the same concept. Incoming requests, you match it based off some combination of something, and then you respond with whatever information you feel like you want to respond with. And how you do it is, that's where the details are.